I'm Mike the Man and welcome to my channel. In the case of John Ramsey, I am asking you guys to clear your mind completely. That means for the duration of my video, I am asking you to forget everything you ever heard about the case. Especially forget about the many news segments in which all avenues have been explored, most of which had absolutely nothing to do with this particular crime. I personally came back to this case when I saw Burke Ramsey on the Dr. Phil show. And what I wasn't aware of at the time is that CBS had done a documentary called The Case of John Ramsey. And within this documentary, well, let's just say the documentary resulted in Burke Ramsey suing CBS for $150 million. Dr. Phil's interviews was for CBS. So, does it mean part of the settlement, part of the solution was to do something that's going to clear his name without asking the hard questions such as, what do you think should happen to the killer of your sister? Because Dr. Phil has oftentimes mentioned that this is an ideal question to ask, and he has asked many guests this exact question. And on John Rogan, he talks about, oh, I like to create a mind virus in people. And here he didn't ask anything tough, and in the end, he had the audacity to tell us why we should think Burke Ramsey was smirking in a way that everybody watching it felt extremely uncomfortable. Duping delight is the positive feeling that some people experience when they lie, either before, during, or after lying. It can include a sense of excitement from taking a risk and getting away with it. Imagine having gotten away with something since you've been 9 years old. Talking about duping delight becoming a part of your pattern. By the way, this is all allegedly. Everything I'm saying is my opinion only. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty, and I'm not a juror, and I'm not a judge. So all I'm doing is stating my opinion and doing my best to let you know how I have come to form my opinion and getting away with it. And sometimes a feeling of contempt for the person being exploited. Contempt is what I saw in him. Very much so. Doping delight can be made visible to others through an inappropriate smile, a high intensity version of the Dutchian smile, which involves the cheek, eye, and mouth muscles, is often associated with lying. And involuntary laughter at inappropriate moments can also be duping delight, which we have seen in the case of Katie Proudfoot again and again and again. When I saw that interview with Burke Ramsey, I knew I've been looking in the wrong direction. I wasn't sure exactly what to look for, but all of these allegations, all of the talk about strangulation and certain types of abuse, and it led to a media frenzy where you would see John Vinay's picture made up for the pageants, and there was also the claim that maybe somebody was stalking her and broke into the house, and even Burke Ramsey had the audacity on the Dr. Phil show or that particular interview to actually express such so-called suspicion. Not long after that, I came across a segment of Patsy Ramsey being inside of the police station, being so-called interrogated. Of course, it was a fluff job. It wasn't a real interrogation. Not the types that, we would see on TV usually. And here's what she stated.
Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it. John Ramsey didn't do it, and we didn't have a clue of anybody who did do it. Outside the...
Better go back to the damn drawing board. Look at her statement now. I didn't do it is a reliable denier. Of course, there are very few exceptions in sociopathy, for example, but from what I have seen in the case of Patsy Ramsey, her language and everything else, she is not a sociopath. She also said John Ramsey didn't do it. Mind you, how would you know, Patsy? If you were asleep, how would you be able to make such a reliable denial for your husband? Because it is just that. It is 100% reliable denial for her husband. John Ramsey didn't do it. And she's also telling us, with such a reliable denial, that she knows this for a fact. That tells us that she knows exactly what took place. And now she says, and we didn't have a clue. In the past, she didn't have a clue. What didn't she have a clue about? She didn't have a clue that when Burke smeared feces on her presence, or he hit her with a golf club. And by the way, I watched the case of John Ramsey. The documentary is highly enlightening. It's featuring Dr. Henry Lee and Dr. Werner Spitz, the late Dr. Werner Spitz, who died last year at the age of 97, who was also there for the JFK investigation, and he's a very prominent dude who had given a very strong level of expertise to that documentary. If there's anything you want to watch about the case, don't watch anything. Nothing, except this one. This is the only one I have seen which actually truly gets to the essence, doesn't play around, doesn't get sidetracked, and addresses all of the potential allegations and tells us exactly why these are incorrect. And we didn't. You didn't have a clue. Remember when John Ramsey gave these press conferences and said, now we have to figure out why this happened. He didn't say who did this, but why this happened. He skipped the who part completely because he knows who did it. What he doesn't understand is why. He was a very busy man at the time. He was not there a lot. He missed a lot of the dynamics between Patsy, John Benet, and Burke. And Patsy also didn't have a clue. She didn't see this coming whatsoever. Of anybody. She doesn't want to get specific, of course. Just like Chris Proudfoot likes to talk about, look anywhere. Any. But here is something significant. She could say, and we don't have a clue who did it. That's all you had to say. And we, present tense, don't have a clue who did it, but she says, who did do it? She knows who did it. Who did do it? The person who did do it, loosely referenced as anybody, they didn't have a clue at the time how this could be in the making, how things could develop to this point. And you hear also the difference between the very stern, I didn't do it, John Ramsey didn't do it, and then she stumbled and we didn't have a clue. I let you hear this stuff one more time, people, just so you realize what I was saying.
Go back to the damn drawing board. I didn't do it. John Ramsey didn't do it, and we didn't have a clue of anybody who did do it.
You see, the third sentence, there is a very big issue with that. She is stopping herself. I didn't do it, John Ramsey didn't do it, that's experiential memory, and everything combined. It's a very simple sentence. These are two simple sentences. And they're very strong because she didn't have to think about, how am I going to word this? Another reason why the Ramseys came off so extremely confident when they spoke, because neither of them actually did do it. This statement already, if this was all I had to work with, people, I would already know who did it. And I did already know who did it when I heard this one statement. So don't listen too much to people who tell you you have to analyze 100 papers in order to get to it. When you find the right statement, you already know. There were 3 people in the house during the 911 call. They claimed Burke was asleep, but you could hear him in the back. When she says, I didn't do it, John Ramsey didn't do it, I already know who did it. She's telling us because there were only 3 people aside from John Benet. And during her third sentence, with the red flags, it confirms to us that this is what it is. Now, I didn't realize until just now that the Q&A from which I have featured the embedded confession by John Ramsey, the question was actually from Jim Clemente, retired FBI agent, who was at the helm of the CBS documentary investigating the case. And he asked John Ramsey a question. He said first, my condolences, and it's appropriate to do that because John Ramsey didn't kill his daughter. And I'm also convinced that all of these talks about abuse, no. I mean, Peter Hyatt said something about there's an indication in John's language that he may have been a victim of abuse in his own childhood. I didn't look into this too much. It wasn't significant to me. And of course, I am not dismissing that, but there are so many things that we can get from people's statements where we have to be very selective and allow ourselves to get straight to the point because we don't want to waste time ever looking into the wrong directions, because statement analysis is there for the purpose of eliminating all the wrong directions. The question by Jim Clemente is quite long, tedious, and exhausting. And I don't know if you guys want to hear it or not. It's a 2-minute question. All right, maybe I will do it. Let's see. La la la. Okay, coming up, people. Wait.
Make good.
Where are we at here, man? You see, I commented on this thing, and I commented with my timestamp.
Where the daughter of a businessman has been targeted by kidnappers for ransom, and they left a extremely lengthy and confusing ransom note that was written on materials with materials in the house. Mm-hmm. But then, instead of kidnapping your daughter, they actually, I'm sorry, but brutally murdered her. Mm-hmm. Left the note and the body at the same location, in the same house. It's just never happened before. But what has happened before is tens of thousands of times in that same time period, there have been literally that many cases where somebody staged a crime scene to be something it was not. You know, that's the police theory, that Burke hit his sister and killed her. And then we, to protect Burke, staged this whole strangulation, ransom note craziness. And that theory would not make good. That Burke hit his sister and killed her. And then we, to protect Burke, staged this whole strangulation, ransom note craziness.
Enough. This is now the embedded confession. Remember my video? It's called Embedded Confessions, Jerry McCain, Chris Proudfoot, and John Ramsey. And of course, I borrowed the Jerry McCain part from Peter Hyatt's analysis that he gave in Richard D. Hall's interview and held it side by side for you guys. The embedded confession by John Ramsey is Burke hit his sister and killed her. And then we, to protect Burke, staged this whole strangulation ransom note craziness. He is referring to the strangulation red herring as craziness. He's telling us she was not strangled. That was later on stage. And there's so much I could get into now from the documentary that is so full of information that has never been aired before that. It's almost 10 years old now, 9 years old, I think, at the 20th anniversary of her passing, it was aired. And he is telling us the ransom note and the strangulation thing was staged. He's referring to it as craziness. She was hit over the head, most likely with a flashlight. There was pineapple digested by her. A little bit. And the food she had for dinner was already through her system. And it's been hours since then. Hours after she had dinner, it was concluded she likely took a piece of pineapple from Burke, and the flashlight and the head wound, the broken skull, matches up perfectly. And the ends of the train tracks. She was poked with those after she already passed, which would have been something a child may do to see if there would be a reaction. Now, he says Burke hit his sister. He didn't say my daughter or John Benet, because to this day, he doesn't understand why. Burke hit his sister. That's his sister. Why did this happen? How could this happen? That was, and it's very remarkable how after 20 years, the same questions linger in people's minds. They come back to the same question that they have not been able to answer yet. But Patsy also said, my children are my life. If I lose Burke, I have no more reason to live. Burke hit his sister and killed her, and then we, to protect Burke, staged this whole strangulation, ransom note craziness. This told me who it was. And this tells me how it was done, by hitting her. And it also tells me what was done afterwards. They staged the strangulation and the ransom note. A lot more is in that documentary that I probably now reference, but first of all, I would like to give you a very strong highlight, which is a prime example of how statement analysis works. What we have learned in 2013 from somebody on a grand jury, that the grand jury actually voted to indict the Ramseys. But people said, wait a minute, the DA, Alex Hunter, he said that they voted not to. Wait a minute. Let's hear this for a minute. And I hope CBS is okay with me using this, because I really, really don't want to get a copyright strike for such short part. Give me a second, because I want you to hear and see the deception in this particular statement.
If the grand jury, those who heard all the evidence and heard from all the witnesses, felt that there were grounds to indict the Ramseys, then Alex Hunter, it's surprising that he decided not to prosecute them.
So now, look at this statement and listen carefully.
The Boulder grand jury has completed its work and will not return. No charges have been filed. Yet I must report to you that I and my prosecution task force believe we do not have sufficient evidence to warrant the filing of charges against anyone who has been investigated at this time. So in light of the fact that we now know the grand jury did sign the 2 charges for Patsy and the 2 charges for John, it really puts in a different light the statement that Alex Hunter made in 1999 when the grand jury concluded its proceedings. The way he said it was very misleading, as if they did not want to file any charges. But then later, he says, I and my task force decided that there's not enough evidence to charge anybody. But he made it sound like the grand jury also agreed with him. Not that he was actually totally contradicting what the grand jury did. Right. I mean, the words seem to be very carefully chosen. Yeah. It was in the public interest to know that actually the grand jury did return and recommend the charges for Patsy and John, but you would never understand that, as we never did at the time.
The Boulder grand jury has completed its work. That's true. They have completed their work. And what is missing here? He is not saying they have voted to indict or not to indict. He's not telling us that. And will not return. He's telling everybody, let it go. Stop talking about it, hoping about it, thinking about it. This is now the decision that has been made. It's finished, it's over. This is my final statement. And at the end, he also says, well, that will come later.
Said that under no circumstances will I or any of my advisors discuss grand jury proceedings today or ever, unless ordered by the court. Of course. Under no circumstances will I or any of my advisors discuss grand jury proceedings today or ever, unless ordered by the court.
So, this is exactly it. Unless ordered by the court, he's telling us this is final. The grand jury has completed its work and will not return. So, what was the result of the work? What was the decision? What have they decided? How have they voted? He says no charges have been filed. And this is passive language. And we know passive language is very often used when somebody wants to avoid telling us who did it or who didn't do it. In this case, of course, it was his office that decided not to file charges, despite the fact that the grand jury were voted to indict. He said, yet I must report, yet. That is also a giveaway, because it's kept in the back of his mind, or whoever wrote with him, the mind of that person, that there's a contradiction. Yet I must report to you. This is now my job. I have to tell you this. Because I cannot simply leave this by saying no charges have been filed. Because it would be my job to file charges. So in this paragraph, in this part now, he's taken the responsibility necessary. And of course, most people would say, well, he just told us the grand jury didn't file charges. Well, they wouldn't be filing charges. They would vote to indict. And then it's up to the DA to file charges or not. Yet I must report to you that I and my prosecution task force believe we do not have sufficient evidence to warrant the filing of charges against anyone who has been investigated at this time, which of course doesn't name the Ramseys. And where they really investigated? Yeah, but not as they should have. This is what a misleading and deceptive statement looks like, people. This is a prime example. And as I have often said, we are used to these types of statements, which are in fact misleading, and many times years and years later, often decades later, we actually realize how misleading something was. If you listen to political speeches, for example, that's why I don't like to do politics at all, because no matter what side you're on, you're going to be upset with my findings. And the most important thing is that our minds have to be clear completely and allow the subject to let us know exactly what is going on. The Boulder Grand Jury has completed its work. True, and will not return. Also true, This is it. No charges have been filed. Absolutely no charges have been filed. He hasn't filed any. Yet. Uh-oh. What do you mean by yet? Now you're talking about yourself. And you're avoiding to name the Ramseys even as having been investigated. This is saying, go away. Nothing is going to happen. Despite everything, I have made the political decision, and he, according to one of his former employees, oh, I forgot what the guy's name is, who worked the case, and after 2 years he quit. He said, wait, I have to get back with my people because this is now a political decision. So again, even on many different levels, like the Chris Proudfoot case with Sebastian, I'm calling it Chris Proudfoot case because he's been talking so much. You see, this is what happens when you do 2 reaction videos on his stupid non-stop lives, which is why I'm taking a break also. This is a lot better, and I would maybe take a longer break because I want to focus on what is important. It's easy to get sidetracked, people. Where Nick Barris suddenly, tells us what I said isn't so. These lights and no, I was wrong. You never know who makes what decision. But when you have statement analysis, back then I had no idea. I mean, I probably would have picked up on something. I always picked up on certain things like, is it just me or is there something missing? But now with statement analysis, if I had to go back in time and didn't know about the grand jury, this is an obvious one. It's very obvious because of what he is avoiding. He's avoiding to tell us what the grand jury decided and instead uses passive language. Mixing the filed part with the indictment part. Avoiding to tell us whose responsibility it is to file charges. Leaving the possibility open that the people who are not really sure about the legal processes could assume it was a grand jury. This is a very good example for how statement analysis works. Now, let me continue a little bit about what the grand jury actually decided. Stay tuned.
Moreover, unless ordered by the court, laws in each state vary dramatically. So it's really important for us to talk to an attorney who has not only worked in law, but in Boulder, Colorado, to tell us the nuances of how that law is applied.
So on or between December 25 and December 26, 1996, John Bennett Ramsey did unlawfully, knowingly, recklessly, and feloniously permit a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation which posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, which resulted in the death of John Bennett Ramsey. The other count was John Bennett Ramsey did unlawfully, knowingly, and feloniously render assistance to a person with intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the discovery, detention, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, and punishment of such a person, knowing the person being assisted has committed and was suspected of the crime of murder in the first degree and child abuse resulting in death.
Does that mean that they're charging John with assisting Patsy if she did it, and they're charging Patsy with assisting John if he did it?
It's legally possible in the state of Colorado for John to be assisting Patsy, Patsy to be assisting John.
Wouldn't they both then also be charged with the underlying crime as opposed to just...
Yes. Normally, if they do an accessory charge, which here is generally after the fact, it's usually somebody else. My opinion would be that there's a third person.
The only third person that's left is Burke Ramsey.
And it's a complicated area. Colorado's minimum age for prosecution is 10 years old. The science behind it, of course, would be that the child under 10 is not psychologically able to commit a crime. And they use the old common law term, which is infancy, which is to say that they cannot form the intent. If you look at the brain science, as we know, the frontal lobe is not fully developed, and that's where the executive functioning occurs. And so it's difficult to say, well, a kid clearly made a decision to do X, Y, Z. With regard to Burke, he was 9 at the time of the crime. Right. So you have to go at the time of the crime. Right. I don't know how they would prosecute him because of that floor, that minimum age of 10.
He was 9 and 11 months, 1 month shy of being 10.
To say it was, you could say negligent homicide. Even if he was, prosecuted now, you can't even prosecute him for that because he was not yet 10.
Did you guys hear that? This is what the indictment was for. So, to say that John and Patsy were indicted for their murder, for them murdering their daughter, is also misleading. This person has knowledge of the legal system in Colorado, and how it was worded was very sensitively done, the same way Alexandra's statement was sensitively worded. Words are very, very powerful, people.
It's really important for us to talk to an attorney who has not only worked in law, but in Boulder, Colorado, to tell us the nuances of how that law is
One more time. Justice.
So, between December 25 and December 26, 1996, John Bennett Ramsey did unlawfully, knowingly, recklessly, and feloniously permit a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation which posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, which resulted in the death of John Bennett Ramsey. The other count was John Bennett Ramsey did unlawfully, knowingly, and feloniously render assistance to a person with intent to hinder, delay, and prevent the discovery, detention, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, and punishment of such a person, knowing the person being assisted has committed and was suspected of the crime of murder in the first degree and child abuse resulting in death.
Does that mean that they're charging John with assisting Patsy if she did it, and they're charging Patsy with assisting John if he did it?
It's legally possible in the state of Colorado for John to be assisting Patsy, Patsy to be assisting John.
Wouldn't they both then also be charged with the underlying crime as opposed to just...
Yes. Normally, if they do an accessory charge, which here is generally after the fact, it's usually somebody else. My opinion would be that there's a third person.
The only third person that's left is Burke Ramsey.
Again, accessory charges. So, I'm telling you, the more you do statement analysis, the more you're going to realize the media is really the enemy. At times, highly misleading. So a couple of other things I wanted to just go back into, because there was a friend interviewed, a former friend of the Ramseys, who said that the word was out, everybody needs to shut up and cannot talk to police if you're a friend of the Ramseys. And she didn't do that. She wanted to help solve the case. And she said, first of all, that what I found interesting, her daughter is Burke's age, but she played with John Benet mostly. And that John Benet took her into her room, and she saw all of the trophies from the pageants. And the girl asked John Benet, "Oh my God, what is all this for?" She says, these are this is from the pageants, but they're really my mom's. So I don't necessarily think that Patsy was pushy. Well, let me say it like this. Burke said that on Dr. Phil, that his mom was never pushy, and not necessarily so. Maybe John Benet had fun. Kind of fun dressing up and doing all this. I don't know. This is not my area of expertise. But obviously, the main reason Jean Benet did all this was to please her mother. She didn't even take ownership of these trophies because to her it was not important. And the gardener also said, yeah, she would just jump into this pile of leaves, and she was the type of girl that didn't mind getting dirty. That's why I like to use real pictures of her when I use a cover for my videos, and not the obsessive, not the expression of Patsy's obsession, which is exactly what it was. And I want to demonstrate this to you one more time, as I have previously done. And this is from the 911 call. One thing that was also mentioned in the documentary by a statement analyst who was there, that of course you are not expected to hang up the phone, because the phone is the lifeline. The 911 operator, that is your line of hope. To hang up means you give up on hope. And of course, there was in the end the voices of John, Patsy, and Burke allegedly were heard. I don't know if you can hear it here. Maybe this is not the place to do it. Yeah, you cannot really hear it there. But let me just go back to the very beginning and then stop. A note is left and our daughter is gone. The note is the priority. Finally, she gets to her daughter, and she never mentions her name even once in the entire call.
How old is your daughter?
She's 6 years old. How old is your daughter? She's 6 years old. She's blonde. 6 years old. The former friend of the Ramseys, also mentioned something else. In order to understand the level of obsession that Patsy had, she mentioned that one time she visited the Ramseys, and the daughter, John Benet's hair was bleach blonde. And she said, Patsy, oh my God, did you bleach this child's hair? She's only, 6 years old or 5 years old or whatever she was at the time. The fact that she adds she's blonde when the question was, how old is your daughter? She's 6 years old, she's blonde. 6 years old. She corrected herself and realized, okay, this was not the question. I need to go back to she's 6 years old, because she realized that, you know, this had no place here. She actually allegedly bleached her daughter's hair blonde. Patsy had black hair or dark hair, and she was Miss West Virginia. So her career ended there. It was always her dream, I'm assuming. And so I looked up the pictures of, okay, she was Miss West Virginia 1977. So I looked just briefly, who was Miss America 1977 or 1978? And both of them had blonde hair. Back in those days, it was considered a great advantage to have blonde hair for beauty contests. And I am thinking that Patsy Ramsey felt disadvantaged, and probably felt that because of her hair color, she didn't have much of a chance to become as big as she wanted to be. And Burke was the apple of her eyes. That was her first child, not John's, but her first child. And the neighbor, not neighbor, but the friend of hers, former friend of hers, said that he was just, I don't like to use the word spoiled, but he was just so extremely cared for. And when John Benet was born, and her mother, who, by the way, she met John Ramsey when she was 21, and he was, I think, 14, 15 years older, something like that. You know, she decided, yeah, okay, I got a good man, and I'm going to be a housewife now and raise a family and this. But the moment her little daughter was born and she saw this baby's hair color, that she's blonde, her old dreams or obsessions came back. And that's why I love the quote by Carl Jung, something to the extent that the biggest burden a child has to suffer are the unfulfilled dreams of their parents. And in this case, when she saw her beautiful daughter with blonde hair, she probably figured, I didn't get to do it, she will. And it wasn't that she loved Burke any less, but her obsession took over. And Burke suddenly experienced such an enormous withdrawal of the affection, the love that he used to get, that it was affecting him extremely. It was an extreme situation. That's why I wanted to highlight one more time what she said during that 911 call, which I have examined previously. There is a video of mine out there from, I think, a couple of months ago, where I go more into detail. Actually, 2 videos. And the 911 call is full of red flags, of course. John Benet's name isn't mentioned even once. First priority is that, we have a kidnapping. And then she finally says, there's a ransom note and my daughter is gone. By the way, my daughter is gone. Why are you calling? And also this lady, she said, yeah, it was very strange that she would then hang up, but she didn't actually manage to hang up. But she intended to. That it seemed to her at the time, this was like a chore to her. We have to make this call. And then in the background, she could listen a little bit, and they were calm. So there was no longer that faked sense of urgency that she tried to portray in the 911 call. So I appreciate you guys watching me. To summarize it, I didn't do it, John Ramsey didn't do it. Here's the embedded confession. This is what a deceptive statement looks like. This is why we do statement analysis. Everybody thought it meant something different. Well, not everybody. A statement analyst, that's why we're doing this. That's why we don't say, oh, he meant to say this. He probably meant to. No, if they don't say it, we cannot say it for them. And he never told us, he avoided telling us what the decision was of the grand jury. And I'm putting this here to sort of highlight to you guys just the origin of this obsession that I think Patsy Ramsey had, that did so much damage, that took over all of her being. JonBenet didn't care about these pageants. She probably had fun with them. I think she had some sort of fun, a certain level of fun with it. But she made it also clear, this is really my mom's. My mom, she did it mostly, not necessarily out of pressure, but to please her mother, because she could feel how important it was to her mom. And Burke was completely left out. Burke was a regular kid. And he acted out, and again, you can see they used the 10-year-old to hit the replica of a young girl's skull, the replica with the flashlight, the same type that was there on the counter. And you can watch it, The Case of JonBenet Ramsey. It's a very good documentary, and I'm amazed that with all the nonsense that I heard about the case and all of the craziness created by we, allegedly John and Patsy Ramsey. And now John says we want to rebuild the family's reputation. Not we want to find out who killed our daughter. So I think Patsy went through hell protecting her son, and that probably contributed to her cancer returning. So, any questions? Let me know what else you would like me to speak about. By the way, if you send certain cases my way, if you can, attach a statement that sticks out to you. I always need a starting point, and sometimes it's actually very helpful for me not to know too much about a case. Lindsay Buziak, was that the name? Sure, I actually looked at it before, but what I need are certain statements, even just a paragraph. If you say there is somebody here, there's something, there was a statement made, and it looks strange to me, it just gives me a very weird vibe, or it is just out of place, it doesn't make sense, I would love to look at it. But as a statement analyst, I always need a state as a starting point. I need to start somewhere, and statements are my preferred entry point into any type of crime. I'm Mike the Man, and I thank you for watching. Please leave me a comment. Keep sharing. Thank you for sharing my videos on Facebook and everywhere I've seen it. Thank you. Please keep doing it. And I'll see you next time.